first grade. Free kick in at the goalkeeper. Long shot attempted. Oh! Great kick pass out wide. That is fantastic. That is sensational. And that's the winner. Good evening and welcome back to the Blacktown Football Hour podcast. My name is Mark DePoli. I am new around these parts, but you saw me last week in the first episode if you watched along. Otherwise, feel free to go and watch that one first. We're in a new space this time, slightly new looking table, new guests, and plenty more guests to feature throughout, recorded on different days, as you'll see. I'm joined here by Matthew Hetrick and Scott Young. I'll let them talk about themselves a little bit later, but for now I'm going to hog the attention for just a little bit. Recap of last week, we spoke to Brad Attard, the coach, first grade coach of the women's Spartans team. And we spoke to Darren Glover, one of the referees in the BDSFA, Blacktown City Referees Association. Talked at length about Darren's journey around the world and talked about Brad and his pre-season for one of the best clubs around at NPL 1 level. For the women's, certainly. So feel free, like I said before, go back and watch that if you haven't yet. But for now, if you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're coming through Spreaker or Spotify, please make sure that you have your notifications turned on for next week's episode. Each episode will be going live at 6 p.m. Every Thursday. But from now on, we're going to be including all of our BDSFA Deploy Premier League Match of the Round captains and coaches before the games at the weekend. So this is Eastern Creek Pioneer Soccer Club's captain and coach of the Premier League 2 side. And then we'll have prospects on later on. That game will be from 6 p.m. on a Saturday night, that being this upcoming Saturday night. Recap of our AYL competition, which kicked off. The BDSFA boys, they did okay up against Manly, very tough opposition. They played at home, so I think the game to really focus on was the 13s. They came back from 1-0 down at halftime to win 2-1, and even though it was 9 a.m. in the morning and it was quite moggy outside, I guess you could call it, the crowd was probably the loudest at that time throughout any of the games. So it was really the one to watch, that one, and keep an eye on that 13 side for sure. But like I said, took home all the 3 points and with a standout team on the day. The Spartans boys, on the other hand, they played the Wanderers, who have one of the shortest away trips in world football, coming down the road and one roundabout in between. The game to watch, I think, was probably the 18s. They went down 1-0, yes, and they didn't take any points from that game, but they were really in it to the end, and it was a very tough game, and players were injured and all that sort of stuff, but they did well to hang on, and it's a shame they couldn't nick the point at the end, but they're improving every week, and it'll be good to watch them as the season goes on. This week we'll also be featuring, I know I'm hogging the microphone, boys, but this week we'll also be featuring Bill Owen, the chairman of BDSFA and Spartans, and Adam Fairley, and you'll see that later on, so do stick around for that. And like I said, the Prospect Boys will be on later on as well. Couldn't have them in the same room because we might get into a tussle to see who comes out on top in a boxing match before the football match at the weekend. I'm going to start with you, Matthew. Of course, you are the coach of what is a fantastic side, as we saw last season. It'll be great to watch you guys up again. Why don't you introduce yourself for me and talk to me about the club?
Yeah, well, I'm Matthew Hetrick and I'm head coach of Eastern Creek. We've been in the Blacktown Association now for 2 years. We had a pretty good season last year, obviously COVID restricted season. We've talked about that. We've put it behind us and moved on. But look, the Eastern Creek Club itself has been so welcoming to us over the last 2 years, and brilliantly run committee. They're right behind us, and they're building up their juniors and getting back to a big club. Andrew and Sonia Goddard do a fantastic role in getting us down to Eastern Creek and supporting us the way they do. So I can't speak highly enough of what they've done for us.
In terms of getting in contact with you guys, for example, when I contacted Sonia earlier last week and tried to plan it, she's on top of it. She answers straight away and she texts everything through, and she's really keen to help you guys out. So it's great to see that community is really coming along, and I know that you guys are a new team to that club. But it's great to see you doing so well. Scott, let's before we sort of get into the questions that I know you've prepared for, but let's talk about you a little bit. So you're obviously the captain of this side. How many of the boys going into last season did you know prior to, or were you brand new into the scene and they just found you to be the most honourable one, and therefore the captain's armbands on your right shoulder?
My left shoulder. Nah, mate, before we came over, I was the current captain of our previous club, probably for about 5 years. And before being given that captaincy, it was pretty much the same core of guys for about an extra 6 years. So maybe 11 years. We've had a pretty strong core of guys. People have gone away, and then anyway, when I was given that captaincy, I've just ran on with it. And then obviously when we chose to come over to Eastern Creek, it was just the same sort of core of guys, enough to fill a team. And then we just got a few people from around Eastern Creek area, St. Clair and stuff, come on over, and I don't think they had a problem with me being the captain. So it's been good, mate. The boys are great, so it's keeping on, man.
Excellent. And you can watch the interview that we did on the Premier League Media Day a couple of Sundays ago with Scott. He talked at length about the changes from this season to last season, and a couple of other things happening around the grounds and to look forward to. I might link a little bit of that in here now, but if not, feel free to go and watch it as well once you finish watching episode 1. Speaking of the Deploy Premier League match of the round, this ball sitting in front of us now, you saw it last week, brightly coloured yellow. Of course, you can't miss it. Thankful we are for Deploy for again supplying our match balls this year. They've been fantastic. It's great to have them in and around, especially on our media day as well. That ball we made sort of in conjunction with Deploy, and we said, that this is going to be a ball that's exclusively used by our Premier League, and we wanted to make sure it turns up on camera and under lights. And as you can see by the light shining on it now, it's impossible to miss. So keep your eye out for that ball, and you saw it here first and on our Facebook page a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to have an object each week that sits at the top of the table. This is it for this week. And I hope you guys can maybe throw some suggestions as to what you want to see talked about each week. But that's our little object of the week, I guess. Let's flip over this page because we're going to get into the questions that I got for you guys. And we'll go back to Matt first of all. So tell me about what got you into coaching in the first place. Where were you before you found yourself at Eastern Creek, and then how did you end up at this great club?
So I got into coaching by a bit of default, really. I'd done a pretty serious knee injury, and then we were sort of the Premier League squad was sort of didn't really have a coach and was sort of not going anywhere. So I don't know whether I stupidly put my hand up or I put my hand up for it, and that's pretty much how I found myself into it. So that's the story. We were playing at Blue Mountains football club up there. There's a few issues arose. We were handed the opportunity to come down to the Blacktown Association at Eastern Creek, starting in the PL2. Found ourselves there, and again, Scott's already touched on it a couple of weeks ago about how the season finished and what it was like, and then we go ahead again this year.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. So you might not have been a coach for as long as some other people, but that doesn't mean your team doesn't perform under you, of course. The results will tell that if you look back at last season. Would you describe yourself as more of a coach or a manager type? Now, for me, the difference is if you're playing along at home, I'd say a coach is more someone who is going to tactically outsmart the opposition, whereas a manager might get you to run through brick walls or slide tackle an aeroplane sort of thing. So what would you sort of describe your style like? It's a big
Are you going to tell the truth?
No, I'm not going to tell the truth on camera. I'm not going to tell the truth. Nah, look, I'm definitely more of a manager. I've put a pretty good team around me. That tactical stuff, that's not me. I think the boys get up and play for me. That's probably about it. I've got a really, really good coaching team around me. Danny Hinton, Mitchell Hinton. Danny does a lot of work for us, and the boys will back me up on that. He's very good with his sessions. He's very tactically aware, and he helps me. And he's probably made me a better coach too, but definitely a manager, mate. I'm more of a man manager than I am a proper tactical coach, that's for sure.
Yeah. Can you give an example of when maybe one of his hairdryer team talks at halftime kind of inspired the boys?
Yeah, mate. It happens more often than not.
Mm-hmm.
But he's 100% right. He's more of a man manager. He does get the boys up to play. He manages to get blokes back each year to continue playing for him. But it's some of the halftime stuff is if there was a coin jar, you know where I'm about to go.
You told us not to swear.
yeah. So there'll be plenty of money in there. But it works. But the boys respond to it. Some of us laugh and think it's hilarious, but we get out there and give him what he wants. So yeah.
Well, you talked about how you knew a fair chunk of the boys before you came over to Eastern Creek.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about how you might have only played in these colours for probably 30 games if you include pre-seasons for both last and this. How quickly has this group of players, again we touched on this when we spoke last week, but how quickly has this group of players joined a new training field, a new playing field, new coaches, new this and that? How quickly has it come together?
Mate, it did. It's a good question. It did come pretty quick, to be honest, especially like going from the old field that we used to train on at Blue Mountains to Eastern Creek's home ground. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's about 482 car parks in size. It's massive. So we had to adjust. We had to adjust to that, to the size and probably just our structure, which I've touched on before. But it's the core guys and it's the senior heads in the team that have made the gel consistent, and referring to your question about like going from last year through to this year, it's pretty much the same guys, but we don't just turn up and play football together. We do a lot of stuff externally to football. So there's a good core of us that train at the same gym, and if it's not us, it's another group of guys training at their local gym. We do get together on weekends. We're actually, there's quite a few good mates, like best mates within the squad. So I think just not only football inside, but also externally outside of football plays a lot. We do a lot of social things. I think that's why we still play football, but it helps. It does. Any sort of event that we arrange, it's always it's good to have the team involved, and I think a good morale outside of football, it just helps with football, and the gel's always going to be there.
Now, obviously, you would get invited to these social events. You're not excluded, are you?
No, I'm not excluded. I probably should exclude.
You're the organiser, aren't you?
I probably should exclude myself from most of them. No, look, what Scott touched on, it's you got to make the boys feel like you make them feel welcome, right? And it just gets them out of home. Everyone's got a family, everyone's got work. So if we can just get into football, get in, get out, then everyone can do what they want to do on the weekends. So there's no real. Everyone gets on.
Yeah, excellent. I feel like if you're hanging out so much, even outside of the game, it must feel so natural to then come and play together when you know each other's personalities, let alone their footballing strengths.
Yeah, and that probably makes it easier for me too.
Yep.
The boys know each other, and look, it's probably worked really well with the club that we've gone to as well. They've been so welcoming and pretty much like a family. We have lots of support from all the other teams on our sideline most weeks. So it's probably just worked. Good. And fits perfectly.
Well, we talked about your coaching career a little bit. Let's talk about your playing career. So where have you played before in the past? List all the clubs. Let's go through them.
Oh, mate, to be honest, I've been your general one club player. Not that many clubs. Where was I? I started at St Clair Strikers. Then we moved further west, and I was at Emu Plains, going through all my teens through to Prems. Won a comp with Prems. I think actually Matt was.
Yeah.
You were playing then with me.
Yep.
And then after that, we actually both went to Blue Mountains, man. And I've been a Premier League player because I don't have any extra time to try and pursue anything, or even if I have the ability to be a better player. But I was at Blue Mountains from all the way up until I came here. So I think it's 11 years. 12 years. 12 years I did at Blue Mountains, and then obviously we did, like Matthew touched before, we had some issues, and Eastern Creek opened their arms and We came on over.
I can't say that you'd be looking back, I guess, because you guys were so good last season. Great to watch. Obviously, you were the first game that we had last year in the Premier League match of the round. You'll be again the game one this year. Same field as well, of course.
Yeah.
Staying with you for a second. Now, I've worded this a little bit differently. We had a laugh about this off camera beforehand, but certainly I think it's fine to say, without you obviously copying slack from this, but you are certainly you're the captain for a reason. You're experienced head.
Yes.
Is what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Laugh it up, all you Eastern Creek boys. That's the way it is. What would you say, besides knowing them for 50 years of your life? What kind of...
He's 36.
50 years of your life.
Yeah.
What kind of characteristics do you reckon, like about you, your personality traits, the way you sort of respond to situations, do you sort of possess that makes you the captain material?
Yeah, okay.
You're allowed to be honest about yourself. You can...
I think I'd probably be the only guy in the squad that can simmer a situation on the field where I'm not going to be the player getting sent off, and I'll diffuse any issues. I feel that I'm pretty good to talk to the ref and, you know, try to calm things down, and especially try to talk to the players to say, listen, pull your neck in. You know, the ref's after you, essentially. Other things of my characteristics, I think, mate, I'm a hard trainer. I turn up each week and I try to get the boys to follow suit. I do extra things. I bring... You'll probably hear the music cranking in the change rooms. I bring a speaker. I do a lot of things just to make it more enjoyable. I organise the events. I do a lot of things. Some of my players don't understand how much we actually do, but no, I think, to put it down to it, mate, you know, I'm not the best player by far, but I'm a worker, and I just try to lead by example in that aspect, and be a big voice on the field, carry the team, be positive for everyone, no negativity, and try to keep the boys out of any trouble.
Yeah, well, we'll see that in action this weekend, of course. But from what we watched last year, certainly that seems to be the case. Everyone seems to respond to you really well. And like you said, the calmest one should be the one to talk to the referee in high-pressure situations. There will be high-pressure situations this weekend, provided that we play. Touch wood for the rain that's hitting us at the moment. And if you are in a flood-affected area, best wishes to you. Hope that you are all okay and can come to football, go to work, whatever it is. Best wishes to you guys for sure. Back to football for this moment. I want you to consider the fact that you're on a night game, synthetic pitch. It's live streamed. The weather will be a factor. Even if it stops raining now, it'll probably still be wet by Saturday. And you've got tough opposition, which we know was huge games last year. Let's talk about this weekend. Let's give it a bit of a preview from your end.
Look, we know it's going to be tough. We played Prospect twice last year, and to be fair, and Scott can probably answer it, they were probably two of our tougher games. We were, both teams were in it up to their neck, and we managed to get away with a win, and the first time we played them was a draw. So look, we know what we're up against. Probably the hardest thing for us is the weather, and I know, again, we haven't been able to get on a pitch. We haven't been able to get any training in. And look, they're probably in the same boat, right? So first game, we're notoriously slow starters as well. Notorious slow starters. The boys take a bit.
Half-time speech comes in.
The boys take a bit to get up, but we got no excuses. Again, leading into this season, I still feel Prospect are probably one of our tougher opposition. And I know that they've probably signed a few more players, so we're going to be on our guard. But I know our boys are going to be up and about for it, whether we train or whether we don't this week. They'll be up. We'll be ready. And again, 6 o'clock at night, the boys, it's on Syntho, night game. They'll be right. We'll be up and about for it, that's for sure.
So obviously the anticipation is a win. I mean, you're undefeated against them so far, so...
Yeah, look, we're going to every game to win. And again, we've put some goals in for the season. We know where we want to be. We know that there's, PL1's calling, and we know that there's a team pulled out of PL1 this year already. So what happens next year happens. But yeah, that's the goal.
For sure.
Always has been and always will be.
All right. Well, thanks very much for joining me, both Scott and Matt. It's been great to have you on, actually. Thanks for joining me in this ridiculously hot room. Not sure how the transition will work into the next set of guests that we have, but I think I'll just say thank you one more time, and best of luck for this weekend for sure.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
Cheers for having us,
Thank
mate.
you.
No problem. 6 p.m. live stream on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure you are there. For the second part of today's show, I have Spartans men's first grade coach and captain alongside me, Monty and Golan, their full names Andrew Montgomery and Alex Golan next to me. Great to have you guys on. Thanks for coming in on such short notice as well. Yeah, good, excellent. So we'll chat about them in just a sec, but just to recap what you just saw with the Eastern Creek Pioneer boys, be sure to watch them this weekend on the Match of the Round on BDSFA Facebook and YouTube. But let's get into you guys straight away. So off the bat, Andrew, let's start with you as the coach. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, where your love for football sort of came in, and how you ended up at Blacktown Spartans?
Well, firstly, good luck to Hetch and Youngin and all the boys at Eastern Creek. I hope you guys do well. Look, I was at Blacktown City for a number of years, working with the 18s and then in the 20s. Probably it was time to move back into first grade space. That's where I was coaching previously, throughout all the different leagues in the then called state leagues, if you want to refer them as NPLs or League 1, 2, 3. I've seen all the different names. And you know, when the opportunity came up, close to home, hard working, good project, and jumped at the chance.
Of course. And Alex, on the other hand, a little bit more youthful than your coach, of course, but of course you have plenty of experience already, and that's why you're the captain of this side. So why don't you tell me about where your football journey has taken you so far?
Yeah, so started just playing for a local club where I live in Camden. And then after that, we started progressing, I guess, into West Sydney Wanderers at the age of 15, and then spent 3 years there, and then after Sydney FC, where I was in year 10, went to Westfields as well. So I gained a bit of experience for those coaches there, as well as at Sydney FC with a few quality coaches as well. And then from there we went to NPL 1 to play at Sydney Olympic. Things didn't quite go to plan there, but I learned a lot from a lot of older boys there about what it kind of took to play in the NPL 1 league. From Sydney Olympic, I found my way to Marconi. Similar story, didn't quite make it into that first team, but again, I was surrounded by some quality players like Michael Beecham, learned a lot from him. And then from Marconi, I found myself at Spartans, where I've spent the last 2 years, so this is my third year at Spartans, and couldn't be happier, to be honest. The culture here is unbelievable, and haven't enjoyed my football more.
Good, excellent. That's actually great to hear even. Speaking of new phases, that's not you anymore, obviously very experienced now, but in terms of what's changed from last season to this season, you've had some time to really implement your philosophy upon this team and this club. So can you tell me about how your team, your staff went about scouting players this year? And then, you know, once you've mentioned those players and who they are, how have they gone in pre-season so far?
Look, when we Dino and myself came in halfway through last year, we had an opportunity to sort of survey what was here, the players, the culture, playing style, getting to know the guys, you know, getting to know the 20s, 18s players and so forth. One thing that really sticks out is the sort of first session that we came to. It was almost like we weren't coaching Blacktown Spartans, we were coaching the Pharaohs 11. There was that many like people strapped up and mummies, and it was like the walking wounded, you know. There was more strapping than in one of those rooms in Amsterdam. So, you know, we made a conscious decision looking for the right type of player that's already here, existing first, and see what sort of growth they have in there as well. And then from there, we looked at what we could get from outside. So, obviously knew a lot of the players that were already here, like Golan. I was at Blacktown City when he was at Olympic. Mason Island, coached Mason at Blacktown. You know, there's a lot of players. So I'm a big believer in the youth philosophy, giving youth a chance. And there was a lot of players that are out there in NPL 1 that are maybe sitting behind a more experienced player, And that doesn't mean that they're not good enough to play NPL 1. It just means they're not getting that opportunity because someone, rightfully so, is better in front of them in that space. So they're the types of players that we sort of looked at. Brought in guys like Subi Bangura from Blacktown City, superb guy, coached him for a number of years. Under 20s NPL 1 Player of the Year, Golden Boot, done the business in NPL 1 first grade as well. However, we're sitting behind goal scoring machines like Trav Major, Sean Rooney, Big Charles Mendy and so forth. So he's of the age where he needs to play. So brought a player like him across. Billy Patramanis, same thing at Olympic. Found it hard to break through into their side. Some of the other players we brought through, a couple of boys from our youth team, obviously, in Hutcho and Paulie. Tommy Beanats, again, getting a senior contract as well. And we also looked at bringing back those ex-Spartans players that for whatever reason, whether they were sold a dream or whether they thought the pastures were greener elsewhere, went to other clubs and found that wasn't the case. So we're looking to bring them back home, like an Andy Holder and Tommy Beanats that I mentioned as well. And even Lord Darko and Justin Biego, ex-Spartans players. So the big key for us was getting in good people, humble, hard-working, epitomise what the West should demand from not only players but also people as a whole. Like, be honest with each other, give it your all, and call a spade a shovel. And that's what we've done. In terms of our overseas players, obviously reached out to my contacts overseas, and I think we've done quite well there. But again, I want to avoid being that guy that sits here and talks about it. Let's do the business on the part.
For sure. Well, speaking of that pre-season, and we can bring you in, Alex, here, of course. How has the pre-season looked? I was there for your Rockdale away trip, which was, of course, posted up online, little vlog or blog, if you want to call it, and some match highlights. So feel free to go watch that after this, of course. But other than that game, which we were at, how's the rest of the pre-season looked?
Golden?
I think it's been positive. I think it's been hard. I think pre-season's been hard. And something that's happened that I didn't think was what would happen is it's actually brought the boys closer. So we actually started to lean on each other more in training sessions because it was that hard that we had nowhere else to go other than each other. And I think that brought us a lot closer. Even the new boys coming in, I think they gelled really well. And the culture off the field is unbelievable, as well as on the field as well. We've had some good results, but at the end of the day, it was just about trying to do what we do at training, bring that onto the field. And I think we've done that quite well. I think we've still got a little bit to go, but very happy so far.
I think it's important to note that when we're talking about our pre-season, it's not just about the results as well. It's everything that Alex has just mentioned in terms of building that, I'll say professionalism, that whatever gets thrown at us, we get on with it. We're here to do a job and do that job properly. And if you're not, stay at home. So everyone has bought in amazingly well. We've got a fantastic group of guys here. But one of the biggest signings that we've done off-season is bringing in Shannon Codd from Active Body Physio as our strength and conditioning coach. He's worked with ATP tennis tour players, Miami Heat, Miami Dolphins, Blacktown City, New Zealand Rugby. In my opinion, the guy's one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in Australia. And what he's done with this group of guys, it's amazing.
I don't think I've ever had a harder pre-season or been in better shape until now. So a lot of that goes to Shannon. A lot of that credit goes to Shannon.
There you go. Well, look, I've got you two sitting beside me, so I think it's best to ask you about this. How is your relationship in terms of a coach and captains? How much extra work are you guys putting in behind the scenes after the lights go out of training to make sure that things in this team stay ticking?
Well, look, Alex is someone who is in a senior position, but I also expect not just a group of players, but I expect everyone to be making those senior type decisions as well. But in terms of Alex, obviously, we have conversations about ways to approach the games, methodologies, how the boys are feeling. He's someone that I can rely on and bounce things off. And in pre-season, he's been nothing short of outstanding. Some of his performances just been a true colossus, true leader. And with the departing Richie Blanco, we're looking for a new captain for this year. And we had a number of applicants, really, if you want to call them applicants, a number of people putting their hand up. But for me, there was just one true outstanding leader, and that was Alex.
And I think we're fortunate this year as well. I think we've got a lot of leaders in the team. I can definitely think of 5 or 6 at the moment that's in the squad. So in that perspective, I think we're very lucky that, if for some reason I'm having a bit of an off game, we know someone else is going to step up, and we've got plenty of people leading. So that's great to have as well in the squad.
Now, it might only be a short time that you have been the captain, but how has sort of your work and the work of maybe that leadership team, maybe 2 or 3 other guys who are sort of recognised as those leaders, how have the boys responded to you in your time so far?
Yeah, good. I don't think much has changed. I mean, I haven't changed too much from what I usually do. I think I like not just to lead with words but actions as well. On the pitch, on game day, I think we have plenty of boys that chat before the game, after the game, during the game, which is great. I try and do as much as I can. But as far as actions on the field, I like to kind of put my foot down and make sure we're tackling, we're winning our 50-50s, we're aggressive, and whatever Andy says, we're trying to implement, and I'm trying to make sure that happens as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in terms of having to lead young guys into their maturity, and they're juggling things like leaving school or starting a job or starting uni, whatever it is. We talk about how many sort of Spartans juniors have maybe progressed their way through that you're aware of that are now in that sort of 20s reserve and first grade level. How many do you know that have come through and are starting to kill it?
Well, quite a few. I would even go as far to say the majority. It's one thing that when I came into the club is for the longevity. This can't just be a year-to-year proposition. For the longevity of the club and the healthiness of the club, we need to produce our own. And it's evident that you look through some of the Wanderers teams and Sydney FC and all the other teams that just poach NPL players. It's full of ex-Spartans players. And Central Coast Mariners as well. So let's concentrate on providing an avenue of growth for them, a pathway, and a place that they can feel comfortable to stay here to develop, and then from here, then go overseas or somewhere like that, rather than going to one of these other A-League academies, maybe play 1 or 2 years, get chewed up, spat out, and then they're looking for another gig again. So for the longevity as well, it helps with player points and so forth. You're not scratching around looking for a whole new team each year. I would prefer 100%, that's the goal, 100% of our players to come from within rather than outside.
So there's lots of juniors, but we know that there have been players that have been brought in. So the team dynamic would have changed a little bit. Obviously, a new captain as well, and starting a new pre-season with a new coach. So there's a lot of changes, even though there will be a lot of familiar faces around. Can you sort of talk to me about, and we did talk about this off camera beforehand, but what kind of things have you guys done in pre-season, or even towards the back end of last year, where you've gone about sort of team bonding and making sure that you're all one? There's no sort of 3 different groups that go off and sit in different parts of the change room. How does that all sort of work?
I've been in teams where that's happened before, unfortunately, where it is divided. And this, like I said, Blacktown Spartans, especially as a youth player coming through, this is the place to be. You're going to get your opportunities. You're going to come into 18s, 20s, first grade in a good environment where you're going to get welcomed. You're going to get, not spoken to in the wrong way. You're going to get treated the right way by the coach and by the group of players as well. So this is definitely a place where you can come and you can develop. You will get opportunities at this club. This club provides a lot of opportunities for young players, just like Andy was saying before. So yeah, it's definitely good. As far as social stuff, we tend to just try and maybe once a fortnight after training go get dinner together, where we can just sit down for an hour, have some food, have a drink and talk, and bring the new boys in, get to know them on a personal level. I think that's important rather than just on the field. Because once you start to get to know these boys on a personal level, you can start to connect with them in different ways, which again will help on the weekend during the game. So yeah, I think that we've done that really well. I think we've had maybe 3 or 4 in this pre-season, 1 before Christmas, maybe 3 after Christmas, where we've gone together as a group of mates. I know a lot of boys are close. 4 or 5 of us attended Westfields Sports High School in the same year, or maybe a year or above or a year below, so we've known each other for a while. And yeah, I know a lot of the boys have played previously together, so the group is very tight. New boys that have come in have fit in perfectly, and even to the 20s and 18s boys have come up and we've had a bit of a training session with them. They've come into the group, they've been welcomed, and they've done really well. So if you're in that stage where you're not getting opportunities at clubs, this is a club that will give you the opportunity if you put the work in. So
I think last year we had 6 or 7 from the under 18s or 20s play in first grade, actual real minutes, not sitting on the bench and getting a photo, actually getting on the park.
Good, great to hear. So it looks like things are really positive. And I'd like to say, look, you've got a game this weekend. Round 1's coming up. Northern Tigers away, which is the start of 3 away days in a row. Let's talk about you in terms of how you're going to approach this and how you'd approach any game, really. So I've got down here. Are you the kind of coach who will adapt his side to the way that he expects the opposition to line up, or how you go and watch their games and see how they are, or are you going to instill the style of football on your players? That's how they approach every game, and they'll run through a brick wall to make sure it happens.
Look, I think it's a mixture of both. We have to. I believe that first and foremost, you look after your own backyard. And we need to be good at what we do first and foremost, but also within respecting the opposition, what strengths they have and what weaknesses they have as well, and sort of mould that into what your game plan is. So our philosophy underpins the way we're looking to play, but also we need to be mindful of a few things here and there, which comes from the video analysis that we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk about that for a second. How long do those video analysis sessions take to plan, and then how do you do it before training, after training, or is it part of the time that you have?
Well, if it was billable, I'd be driving a Mercedes, I can tell you that. But unfortunately, they're not billable hours. Look, if you ask my wife, it's never ending. If you ask me, I think that I only spend a few hours, but you're constantly looking at the videos, rewinding, taking snippets here, there, taking down numbers, taking down names. Keeping an eye on certain things that are happening. So, look, on an average week, I could spend maybe 10 hours in analysis of the upcoming opponent and previous games and so forth. Straight after the game, I love going on to getting the VO downloaded as quickly as possible so I can watch the game again. Regardless of my wife saying, weren't you just at the game? But you want to see the ins and outs to see, because sometimes what you think you see on the sideline is different to actually what you see on the video. And Golan reminds me of that a few times when I rip into him. It proves to be false.
And I can vouch for that as well. We get the game sent to us the next day straight away, so
yeah.
It's not wasting any time.
That's it. So look, it's a huge part, but it can't detract from what your philosophy is and the way that you're looking to play. That's my belief anyway.
Well, look, in terms of the questions that I have written down, that's all I've got. I would like to get, maybe predictions is the wrong word, but how are you sort of expecting, not even just this weekend, but the first couple of games to go? It's difficult. 3 away, Northern Tigers is not an easy trip away. It's more difficult than the Wanderers up the road, for example. What are you looking to get out of these games, and then long term, what are you looking to achieve this season?
Look, obviously the first 3 are away, and 8 out of 11 in the first round are away. We should be miners. We're away that often, I'm not a big one of looking too far ahead. For me, we've got round 1. I always say to the boys as well, biggest game of the week is the next one. And that's it. Don't worry about the week after. Don't worry about the week after that. There'll be plenty of time to think about the next game. So approaching Northern Tigers, they're always super strong. You know what you're going to get from them week in, week out. Nothing changes. They're a good opponent. Whether they've lost players, gained players, it makes no difference to them. They just keep doing what they do, and they do it very well. So, look, overall, if I was to say what we're looking to achieve from the season, the first step would be to improve on last year. And look, let's make no bones about it. Finishing second last wasn't good enough. So we need to improve on that. Let's set that boundary first, and then we'll see where week 2 takes us.
Yeah, I'm similar. I don't think about round 2, round 3. For me, it's just Northern Tigers. 90 minutes against them, get the job done and get out there. I don't care who we're playing round 2, round 3, round 4. I don't care where we sit on the ladder. For me, I just want to go to that game on the weekend and win the game. That's all in my head anyway. So hopefully everyone's got the same mentality in the team, which I think they do. But yeah, I think if you look too far ahead, you can get distracted, make excuses, that sort of thing, like away games, that sort of thing. I think we train 3 times a week. We focus on that game on the weekend. We go to the weekend, we get it done, have 2 days off, reset, and go again next week.
Mm-hmm. I think Alex sums it up pretty well in the change rooms before most games. I mean, one of his mantras is he'll 2-foot his grandmother to win a game. And I mean, it's a bit savage, but it's something that he goes by, and I agree with him.
There's plenty of video proof of that as well. And so feel free to go have a look at that on the old Instagram pages. There's plenty of videos made about just his slide tackling.
I said that to the kids at coaching the other day. Because they went winning the ball back quick, and I said, "You got 2 for your grandma." They just stared at me.
Oh god!
Did they say anything?
No, just staring.
Just staring.
Don't say much.
Good kids.
Perplexed in there. So I'll look away from the formalities. I know you're a huge Rangers fan. Recently announced that they're coming down to Australia in the off season, play a pre-season bunch of friendlies. I'm sure you'll be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be there. I was there in 2010 when they came out last time. It's actually mixed emotions. I don't agree with them coming out to play them. I mean, without getting too technical, of course, I don't agree with playing your fiercest rival in a Mickey Mouse Cup or a friendly. However, I think the last time I seen them was the derby in 2018 near Christmas, just after Christmas there, where we actually won 1-0, so that was a good one to go to at Ibrox. Definitely be there. We'll see how we go. Could be a bit tasty off the park as well.
For sure. And it's probably something that the Australian people need to be prepared for, that we treat different football a bit differently overseas. And bringing them here might change that a little bit for the night. In terms of who you support, who is it? I don't know.
Man United.
Man United? Okay, so you
Yeah.
must be happy with yesterday's performance.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yep.
No comment.
Awesome. No comment. I think we'll call it there, guys. But that's for your sake and your happiness, not mine. I might start laughing. Thanks very much for joining me, though. By the way,
Who do you support?
Shrewsbury Town.
Sorry?
Exactly.
Heard you the first time.
So, but anyway, wishing you guys all the best for the game this weekend. I won't be there, unfortunately. I can't get out there, but I wish I could, and I'll be watching it back when I can. Best of luck, of course, and thanks very much for coming on here on such short notice as well.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, mate. Appreciate it.
Cheers, guys.
And on to the next segment now. For our third segment today, I'm here with Peter Tsarkos, the coach of the PL2 side, Prospect United. Tell me, right off the bat, how many years have you been coaching with this side?
This side here, Prospect, it's my third year in the Premier League. Been coaching elsewhere, but Prospect's 3 years, only 3 years with these guys. So.
Okay, so prior to that, let's talk about that. So where did your first sort of coaching gig come around? Where was it, and where did you go from there, and then how did you end up here?
Well, I played as a kid. I played in the State League for a club in Parramatta, which was Parramatta City. Played against actual Prospect in the State League, so I ended up playing at Para and then leaving Para and actually come to Prospect, playing 1 year there. Had an injury and basically just started playing just normal park soccer. Then my older son was born, so they didn't have a coach. So I just decided to fill in as a parent like normal parents do, and that was it. And it started from there, and hadn't stopped coaching since then. So I've been coaching for about, from a junior level, a good 27 years now. Yeah. So, which is, it's good. I enjoy it. So,
good.
Yeah.
What was the club that you were at before you came here to Prospect?
Parramatta City it was called.
Okay.
That was in the Granville comp.
Yep.
But like I said, I've got my younger boy who plays for Prospect in the NPL too. So, which is, and I only live on the doorstep of Prospect, so that's really. And I've been there for 20 odd years at that same house, so it's all right close. And I should have probably come a lot earlier, So that's good.
Part of the furniture there, almost you and your family. Yeah. That's good to know. Look, I spoke to Lee, and we'll put in some footage over the top here now, or maybe we'll cut away to it. But he spoke about some of the changes that happened in the off season. Now, in case your memory needs jogging, if you're watching along at home, ultra competitive side Prospect were in the PL2 competition, in the Deploy PL2 competition last time out before our season cancellation. And they're coming up against the side who are pushing them all the way, and that is Eastern Creek. But like I said, we spoke to Lee. I know that you've watched that footage. He spoke about those changes, but let's recap them again. If you had to pick how many sort of fresh faces you say are around the squad this time this year, could you give me a rough number?
Well, yeah. Look, but if we work down from because we work as three squads. So we've got your first grade, reserve grade, 20s. So we base. I know 20s don't technically matter for the club championship, but that's a squad for us. So we want to use those players in that team to bring them up into reserve grade, into first grade. There's a number of players in that 20s team, 21s team that can easily fit into first grade. Without a doubt, very good players. Teams change, the 20s have changed. Reserve grade's changed. Reserve grade's gotten a lot stronger. A lot more players have come in for reserve grade. We've picked a handful of really good players. First grade's basically what it was, with probably two or three new players. We had a couple of boys leave. One played NPL, which, as a club and as me, that's what I would like to see. If I can bring kids through the Premier League, and we can push them into our own NPL and in Prospects NPL, it'd be great for us. You know what I mean? That's probably the aim that we try to do with the Premier League, and try to have all three squads very competitive. But like I said, the first grade is probably it's similar to what it was last year, just with probably 2 or 3 add-ons.
Yep.
2 or 3 had left. So.
And I remember Lee mentioning that he said that the back line was very experienced and the midfield was very hard-working. Your attack line was youthful and pacey. And so if that maintains, and we watched you guys in the match of the round last year, and there were certainly glimpses of that, and I know you'll be starting off strong this year. While we touched on there just about that, having that 3 squads, something that I think some of the best teams in the world in terms of youth systems are doing these days, and look, it's hard to compare to someone like Manchester City, but their squads are so dominant all the way through from their 15s to their first team, and they all play the same sort of football. So is that something you're 100%. A totally different level, of course, is what it is, because they're way below, Manchester City are way below Prospect.
Yep, that's right.
So are you trying to implement a similar sort of thing?
We are. What I'm trying to do is, and you know, I've spoken to the club about it, with Lucas and Matt Toro. We want to try to coach these boys like the NPL, because if there's young kids, especially in the 20s, we can bring them up and get them sort of ready for NPL. Then our NPL sides can actually just come down and look at our boys before they need to look elsewhere for other players. You know what I mean? So we're trying to, all 3 squads, that if I can take one from 20s and I need to take him from the 20s and bring him up in the first grade, he'll play the same way as we all play. You know what I mean? So he doesn't look out of place when he gets there. So that's the aim of what we're trying to do there. So
so I'd imagine there's things like similar formations, similar sort of the actual people in a fullback role or an 8 role will be doing the same sort of thing all the way through. So I can imagine that making that progression eventually, whether it's this season due to the drop-ins and drop-outs, they'll be able to do it. Yep. Speaking of those drop-ins and drop-outs, and we spoke about this off camera, there are going to be players who drop out, whether that's first round or last round. Yep. That might be a last-minute thing. So I would assume, based upon what we heard and what we've just spoken about, your reserve and your 20s are ready to make that jump.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
At a moment's calling.
Yeah. We've got players in all the lower grades that can fill in for if we need to pull players from reserves and push them up into first. And you know what? Look, even the first grade, they're fighting for their spot too. There's not to say you playing first grade and that's it. I'm sorry, but if you're not pulling your weight, and there's one working harder for you in reserve grade, well, he's going to be promoted up, and you guys are going to come down. It's the way it works. You know what I mean? So it keeps everyone on their toes and keeps everyone honest. That's what it does. It keeps everyone honest. So
yeah. Well, speaking of that, to have that sort of understanding with your players, they need to have a lot of trust in you. And to understand that, no, I'm not dropping you because of favouritism or anything, or because somebody else, because of whatever, but they deserve it. That's the only reason. 100%. So in that sense, what I'm sort of leading to here is one of the questions I showed you before, and that was, would you describe yourself as someone who goes into each game and will try and pick holes in what you think the opposition's weaknesses are, or are you someone who's implementing a certain style with his team that they go into every week and they will play it until they get the goals?
Look, there's different teams and they play different ways. We know most of the teams now. Again, during in the off season, the team might have changed. Like, put for instance Eastern Creek. I mean, they might be totally different team. They might be the same team, but it might be a totally different team this year. So unless we play them, I don't know what they're playing. Their formation might be different. You know what I mean? They might might have a weak side, left side, and we've got a stronger side. You know what I mean? So I'm going to attack that. They might have changed that. So unless I see the game, then I sort of an impulse sort of coach and try to bring in players when I need to. And if I see these guys and he's struggling a little bit, whether I'll try to move him into a different position. If it's not working, well then we'll bring someone else on. Unfortunately, with first grade, it's a little bit hard because it's not unlimited interchange. You know what I mean? So once you're on, you're on, and once you're off, you're off. So we'll see how it goes this year.
Sort of sticking with a similar question to that, and would you describe yourself as more of a coach or a manager? Now, I would say the difference is a coach is someone who's tactically astute, whereas a manager is going to make their players run through a brick wall, sort of thing.
Oh, look, I try to be mates with these guys. You know what I mean? But they know when I'm mucking around. They know when I'm pretty serious. You know what I mean? Now, we've had a lot across the board. The actual players, they respond really well to me, and I respond really well to them. So, I mean, you could probably say a manager. So you sort of managing players where what they need to do, because most of the boys can play. It's basically coaching a kid. Once these kids come to first grade, you don't need to actually teach them how to play football. They know. You know what I mean? Like Lee at the back, he's like a coach playing, basically, you know what I mean? And the younger boys actually look up to the guy, you know what I mean? He's an older fella, but mate, I'll tell you, he's probably one of our best players. So he's just his charisma and stuff like that in the park. We had a younger boy that played in the 20s, played in first grade last year, and just looked up at him, you know what I mean? And he would run through a brick wall for Lee. You know what I mean? So, and it's good to have him on the field because he's a good bloke. Look, they're all great. They're all really good. We don't have no one that sort of, thinks he's better than the rest. You know what I mean? So the team's a really tight unit.
And speaking of Lee, it would be great if we could, get him on here one day, maybe after, maybe close towards the finals, for example, because I'm sure you guys will be pushing for those spots. But one of the things I asked one of the Eastern Creek boys, and their captain, Scott Young, and you'll see that on the earlier segment, of course, and that was, what's the relationship like between you and your captain? So how much extra work are you guys putting in sort of off of the field or over a phone call after training?
Before the games and stuff like that, I'll come up and we'll talk with Lee and I'll tell him, this is the lineup we're going with. You know what I mean? Are you comfortable with because I do change the back line. Yep. Like, depends on what formation we do play, and I'll say, are you comfortable with that? If you're not, you need to let me know, you know what I mean? And I'll make changes to suit your way of playing too, you know what I mean? So we've got a really good Lee's a good bloke, you know what I mean? So he's been around, he's played at a higher level, you know what I mean? He's played at Marconi and whatnot, so he knows his stuff on the field. So
excellent.
So it's as a defender and a defender myself, you got to take charge at the back, and he does.
Absolutely,
he commands it.
Good.
Yeah,
so. And if you go back and watch the game that you guys featured in last season, you could hear it.
Yeah.
And while I've got a big giant noise cancelling headphone set on, I can hear it as well. So he. But
it's not saying that. It's not only just Lee. I mean, Lee's a great leader.
Is there like a leadership squad, like a couple?
And I've got another guy, Fozzie, in the midfield, which is I'm not saying they're old, because they're not old. They're just young. They're older than the 21-year-olds, you know what I mean? So, but he's a leader too in the middle, you know what I mean? That directs a few of the younger fellas around too, which makes things easy for me. It makes it a lot easier. Because you probably see I don't yell that much on the sideline. I don't have to, because they do all the yelling on the field. They know what's going wrong. You know what I mean? If they can't see something, then I'll let them know, sure. And then they direct it, and they tell the players on the field where they need to be. So, which is good. It's good.
Well, speaking specifically of this first match of the round, when I spoke to Lee, and if you haven't watched the interview segment with him, it's 3 minutes long. Go and watch it after you finish this. But he spoke of the match of the round occasion is not something that changes how you guys prepare. There's no extra nerves. There's nothing like that. But this is first match of the season. Nighttime, synthetic pitch, most likely to be raining, if not dampened. Under lights at night, and you're playing against what was last season's equal best team. Yeah. So, in sort of previewing this first match this week and this match of the round that you guys are in, how are you making sure that do you need to energise the boys? Do you need to motivate them, or are they ready to go?
Oh, look, they're ready. They're ready to play. Look, unfortunately, because of the rain and stuff like that, we really haven't trained at all. Our first grade squad as a unit, there's no excuse or nothing. They haven't trained at all.
Wow.
Like, we haven't had one training session. That's the honest truth. The boys, you know, they've got to be ready for it.
But they haven't played together for many years, so you'd hope if they were
Well,
fit.
that's right. Look, if the football will play,
Yep.
whether they last the full 90 is another question. But, you know, that's something that I have to sort of work out and sort of talk to the boys in saying that you've got to be patient. You know what I mean? You can't run your head off, because in the first 15 minutes you'll be gone.
That's exactly
So
right.
you got to pace yourself. You've got to be a stayer, not a sprinter, man. What they say in the horses, you know.
That's
So I'll talk to the boys, and you know, we'll get them ready. They'll be all right. They'll be fine. They'll be
And
fine.
look, last season against Eastern Creek, you played them twice. It was a draw and a win for them.
Yeah.
They are going to take this. I would imagine they're going to take this as any other. Like, there's no sort of fear of not beating them this time around. There's just
No. Of course, they're a great team. They're a good team, you know. And that's what. Well, that's what we want. You know, you do want that. You want that as a first grade squad, or even a reserve grade and 20s. You want a squad that, you know, you're coming up in the screen, gets back. You know, oh, we're having a good game. You don't want to go onto a field and say, you know what, I'm going to pump these guys 11-0. You know what I mean? Because it's not. I mean, you enjoy it. Whether you can play really good in a game, fantastic in a game. All the boys play fantastic, but lose and come off the field knowing, you know, we had a great game. It was a good game. Yeah, good on you, mate. Congratulations, you won, mate. That's football. That's part of football.
That's football. That's why we love it.
Yeah.
Peter, that's all we've got time for this segment, but we covered everything and more than what we needed to.
Yep.
Best of luck for what is it, 3 days away now?
Yep.
Let's hope that the rain stays the way it is right now, because the rest of the games are being played behind the camera, and those are on grass fields. So we need to make sure that the rain stays away for at least the second half of Saturday. But thanks very much for coming on here.
Well, do thank you very
Really,
much. Thanks for
really
having
do
me.
appreciate it. We'll probably have you on again when the time comes.
Yep.
On to the next segment. Well, unfortunately, I lied about the 3 segments this week, as we're back here working from home today and wrapping up the podcast for the week. Thanks to all the guests that joined us here today. It was a real blast having you guys on. When the time is right, I'll bring you guys back in and we can have a chat. Speaking of football that happened today, though, and football that's happening this week that I'm excited about, the Real Madrid versus PSG second leg was on this morning, and oh my word, what a game. I can't think of a game that I've enjoyed more this year, probably. No, in terms of that 17-minute turnaround, that's probably one of the best. Be really great to have my compatriots here to talk about that game, but it's just me here. No board meeting sort of wrap up this week. I will do a little shortened segment next week to go along with what I've already planned for the 3 segments next week and the 3 sets of guests. But until then, that's going to do it. So make sure that you guys are watching along on NPL TV for the Blacktown Spartans. Make sure you're watching the match of the hour. More importantly, where you know you'll hear my voice again whether you want to or not. Unfortunately, stuck with that for the season. Sorry. And that should do it for this week. Thanks very much for watching. Cue the outro music. Sounds nice. I made it myself. And we'll see you 6 p.m. next Thursday for the round 3 of the podcast. Ciao.